Imagine being the only one to read all 3,149 chapters of a web novel. It took him 10 years, but Kim Dokja finally finished the last chapter and became the only person to know how the world was going to end. Dokja finishes 3 ways to survive the apocalypse on his train home from work. Since Dokja means only son and also reader in Korean, it's a bit prophetic that he was the only one to finish the web novel. He's 28 years old, graduated from a third-rate college, and is employed as a subcontractor to a large corporation. His coworker, Sung-ah-yu, makes a comment about him being so interested in his phone. She sits next to him and they exchange greetings. She's the most popular girl at work, so sitting next to her is a bit nerve-wracking for him. She usually goes to and from work on a bike, but she was forced to use the train after someone stole it. He sees just how different they are when she practices Spanish during the ride. Even outside of work, she continues to study while he just reads. Of course, he would never tell her what he's reading. While it's nice he gets to ride the train with her, he feels a bit nostalgic about the novel's ending. He's been reading it since 8th grade, when he was bullied at school, when he failed entrance exams and ended up at a third-rate college, through frontline military service, and even in the present as a contract worker. It's kind of crazy that the novel went on so long with an average viewer count of 1. Even by chapter 50, there were only 12 readers. At that point, the story may as well have been written for him, and he shows his appreciation through a comment because he doesn't have the money to donate. What's even worse is he'll be looking for another job again while Sung-ah was hired as a full-time employee, even though they started as contractors at the same time. He resigns himself to being a mere reader, while people like her are the heroes. Before the train ride ends, he receives a message from the author of the novel, thanking him for reading and even sending him a present through email before the novel becomes paid content. It's 6:55, and the email he receives contains a file of the entire web novel and a warning that the novel will become paid content in only 5 minutes at 7 p.m. The train grinds to a halt as the clock ticks over. A flash of red light illuminates the train car, and everyone hears an announcement that the free service of the 8,612th planetary system has come to an end. A dokebi, a furry creature from Korean mythology, floats out of the red flash of light. While everyone else in the train car is bewildered, Dokja recognizes the creature and recalls its description from the opening paragraph of TWSA, 3 Ways to Survive the Apocalypse. The creature is a herald of tragedy that kickstarted the thousands of chapters of the web novel. It speaks gibberish at first, adjusting language settings until everyone can understand it. At first, people loudly complain to the dokebi, thinking this is a poorly thought out prank or a movie shooting that's being done without their consent. Dokja already knows what's going to happen and has to think of a way to stop them. The others in the train car continue to cause a commotion and ignore the creature's request to quiet down until its eyes glow red and blood showers the train car as the loudest passengers have their heads explode. That definitely caught their attention. Any doubts as to the reality of the situation are now gone. Nothing is free in life, and it's time for humanity to pay up. A man in a suit whom Dokja recognizes as Mr. Han from his work's finance team steps up and offers the creature cash. The concept of currency isn't a bad thing, but human money is worthless to dokebi. It incinerates his cash and warns him it'll blow up his head if he tries something like that again. Explaining will take too long, so the dokebi tells them they'll just have to figure it out through experience as golden horns grow on its head, and they receive announcements of a channel being opened and constellations joining to view the channel. With that, a game-like panel appears in front of each of the survivors, announcing the objective of Scenario 1. Kill 1 or more living organisms. Whoever fails the objective in the 30-minute time frame will die. Sung-ah tries and fails to call the police, and Dokja tries to tell her it's like a game. They just need to follow the rules. No matter how much he wants to deny it, the web novel he read for the past 10 years has become reality. If he wants to survive, he has no choice but to play along. Before he can muster the courage to speak up, someone else in the train car tries to calm everyone down and takes charge. He introduces himself as Army Lieutenant Hyun-sung Lee. Dokja recognizes the name. Hyun-sung is a supporting character from TWSA, otherwise called the Steel Blade. The odd thing is that, in the original story, he only appeared after the first scenario. If Dokja is really living out the story of TWSA, then what's going on? A broadcast warns that a national emergency is being called for an act of terrorism. But before he can finish speaking, the Prime Minister's head explodes live on television. The dokebi warns that it isn't just some joke like terrorism. People are still acting like it isn't real. So the dokebi raises the stakes by reducing the time to 10 minutes, with the addition of the first death having to occur within the next 5 minutes or everyone else in the cabin will die. Almost everything is going exactly how TWSA described it, but the main character hasn't made his appearance yet, oddly enough. One of the other passengers in the cabin screams as blood splatters the window in the cabin behind them. Luckily, the cabins are kept separated by the system governing the rules of whatever sick game they're in. To further goad them into action, the dokebi shows them a scene from an all-girls high school as their timer ends and each of the girls falls dead as their head explodes, save for one, Jie Lee, who survives by strangling another girl to death. Things aren't quite as he remembers, so Dokja prepares to open the story document he received and remembers that each survivor receives a special attribute and a skill linked to it. Though when he goes to check his attributes window, it refuses to open. That being the case, all he can do is try to read the file, which activates one of the attributes he was just trying to see, an attribute that lets him read at a faster speed. It takes him less than a minute to read the opening chapter and see that the novel's protagonist was in cabin 3707, while he's in 3807. In the original story, only 2 people survived in his cabin 3707, and Dokja knows who those 2 people are. Mr. Han steps in when a student starts beating an elderly woman, and the student argues that it's either kill or be killed. His name is Na-moon Kim, and he was one of the earliest people to accept the laws of the New World. He continues to beat the elderly woman while the rest of the cabin watches, and panic slowly sets in. If Dokja steps in, the plot will change, but can he really just watch a woman die? Sung-ah steps forward, unable to take it anymore, and he stops her. She isn't the heroine, so she was originally destined to die in the novel as well. It's not that he was too afraid to intervene, he was just waiting for a certain moment. An explosion rocks the train cabin, and he rushes forward. Dokja tackles Na-moon off the old lady and uses the moment of chaos to approach a child holding an insect cage. He takes the cage from the kid and hands one of the insects to him before shouting for everyone to stop beating the old lady. He has their attention for the moment and explains that the quest only requires them to kill a living organism, not specifically a person. He holds up one of the insects from the cage, a grasshopper. Everyone who was previously attacking the old lady rushes at him as he crushes the insect in his hand and tosses the cage toward the other end of the cabin. He receives 100 coins for clearing the mission, and there are 3 minutes until the time limit ends. While the others go crazy and fight over the insects, Na-moon asks him why he did that when he could have just handed them the insects. As it turns out, there were only 3 left. There was no chance for everyone to live anyway. Na-moon seems to be enjoying the situation. A character profile opens and shows Dokja details on the team, including name, age, skills, and stats. Na-moon's nickname in the novel was Delusional Demon Na-moon Kim, an edgelord who quickly adapted to the world in the novel. He then asks Dokja to team up with him. Dokja firmly declines. He would definitely survive if they teamed up, but he knows Na-moon's future and he wants nothing to do with it. The teen steps forward to continue attacking the old woman, and Dokja stops him. Of course, Na-moon still wants to live, so he attacks Dokja instead, and a purple glow follows his attacks, evidence of him using his skill. Another of Dokja's hidden skills activates, Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint, and he finds that he's able to read exactly where the attacks will land. Using his skill, he dodges until the clock ticks down to 2 minutes. Na-moon looks at the old woman again. It isn't just to protect the woman. No matter what happens, Dokja doesn't want him to advance to the next scenario. The teen pulls out a knife, and Dokja only barely dodges the stab at his heart and still gets cut. It's survival of the fittest, and Dokja decides to stop hesitating. An insect egg is also an organism. In fact, it's a collection of potentially hundreds. Dokja reveals his trump card, an egg he took from the insect cage, and he crushes it in his hand, gaining a huge amount of reward coins that he quickly spends to advance stamina from level 1 to level 10. Stamina is also tied to physical durability, and as Na-moon's knife reaches Dokja's chest, it stops. There's a minute left, and Na-moon renews his frantic attacks, none of which even slightly pierce Dokja's skin. 4, 3, 2, 1. Time's up and Na-moon's head explodes. Main Scenario 1 ends with 5 survivors in cabin 3807. The dokebi reappears and looks over the bodies littering the cabin and at the 5 survivors. Dokja, the boy he took the insect cage from, Mr. Han, Hyunsung, and Sung-ah. Dokja should be feeling strong emotions right about now, but he finds himself immersed in a strange state of calmness. It still feels like he's an outside reader, and not quite real. In total, he killed 124 living organisms, 1 grasshopper, and 123 grasshopper eggs. Since he killed non-resistant organisms, he only receives half the coins as a reward, 6,200, and more are deducted for what he spent on raising his stamina to 10, for a total of 3,500 coins. In addition, for his excessive kills, he receives a decimator title. The train continues moving again for only a few moments, and they're able to see the outside world in ruins. Then the train grinds to another halt on a bridge with a serpent from the sea towering over it. Dokja knows it won't attack them though. It's a grade 7 monster, and TWSA prioritizes the scenarios over all else, meaning they won't get attacked by anything that isn't part of the scenario. He looks up at the ecstatic Dokebi and sees 21 little stars, constellations, swirling around him. They're what the Dokebi's channel was made for, cosmic viewers of immense power. 21 is a lot for a newbie Dokebi, and a few of the constellations give Dokja coins for his performance, while others express their hatred towards him for causing Namun to die. He inwardly swears that they'll all be paying with their lives for entertaining themselves with Earth's destruction. Dokja approaches the child, Gil Young Lee, and asks him to team up with him. This is partly out of goodwill and partly out of his need to gain more attention from the constellations, which does work as they gift him more coins. As a final reward for the first scenario, the Dokebi tells them they can now be sponsored by constellations. Dokja is the only one who knows what that really means, and the Dokebi has them experience it by activating a sponsor selection screen in front of them, letting them each pick a constellation that's expressed interest. Dokja's options are the Abyssal Black Flame Dragon, the Demonic Judge of Fire, the Secretive Plotter, and the Prisoner of the Golden Headband. 4 sponsors is quite a lot, and Sung-ah is even given 2 options. Constellations choose a human as their incarnation through the sponsorship system, and grant them various abilities in return for a contract. The names shown aren't the constellations' true names, but it's easy for him to figure out which constellation is which with his knowledge of the novel. The Black Flame Dragon is strong at the start, but it slowly causes its contractors to go insane. The Demonic Judge of Fire is actually Archangel Uriel, which is also a strong pick but comes with heavy restrictions as a constellation of absolute good. Third, the Secretive Plotter is something that was never mentioned in TWSA. Finally, the last option, Prisoner of the Golden Headband, sets Dokja's heart thumping. It's none other than Sun Wukong. Dokja can still remember how TWSA describes someone with a great sage as their sponsor as having the power to crush hundreds of constellations in a single swing and eradicate thousands of monsters with a single bolt of lightning. Perhaps he could even beat the protagonist if he picked it for his constellation. They make their choices, and the Army Lieutenant Hyunsung introduces himself to Dokja, who is intent on recruiting him. Mr. Han tries to berate him for not telling him about the insects as if he's still his superior, but Dokja just tells him to shut up. The company doesn't exist anymore, and the world has changed. Getting fired is the least of his worries. He tries to tell them that they need to move somewhere safe, but they all argue that they're safest where they are. The door to the other cabin with the protagonist starts to shake with a banging sound. Dokja again tells them that they need to get out as soon as possible or they'll all die. Telling them that it's the survivor that killed everyone else in his cabin is enough to get them moving. And Sung-ah finds a door that they can force open as the protagonist continues to dent in the door, which could fail at any moment. It's only a matter of them forcing the door open before then. Dokja could use his coins to boost his strength, but he has a better idea. He tells Hyunsung to use his skill, Great Mountain Push, to open the door. Thankfully, he still has the same supporting constellation and attributes he had in the original novel. He guides Hyunsung through the process of imagining himself using the skill, and sure enough, it isn't long until the door grinds open and they start making a run for it. Before they escape the bridge though, the Dokebi blocks their path. It isn't done preparing the next scenario and introduces a sub-scenario to get across the collapsed bridge and enter Oksu Station. Sung-ah starts to ask why it mentions a collapsed bridge when the bridge is still intact, and Dokja takes off running and yells at them to just make a sprint for it. The bridge is only intact because they left the train too early. It'll collapse any moment now, and it wouldn't be possible to clear the scenario without triggering things early. They're almost to the end when the giant serpent emerges from a whirlpool in the ocean and roars at them. Now they know what's going to collapse the bridge. There are only 200 yards left, but the Dokebi doesn't think things are fun if they're too easy. It adjusts the difficulty of the scenario from E to D and raises the corpses from the train as zombies to chase them. Then, the serpent annihilates part of the bridge. Blown back by the impact, Dokja stands up to see that he, Sung-ah, and Mr. Han are on the wrong end of the bridge. Normally they would be stuck, but one of the constellations sends a blessing to activate a bridge of light across the gap that unfortunately only an even number of people can cross. This means someone has to get left behind. It must be Sung-ah's supporting constellation, but which constellation would be powerful enough to do such a thing? He tries to read her character profile, but sees that she doesn't have one registered. Before he can think about it too much, the zombified corpse of Namun attacks. What's worse is that Dokja's Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint skill doesn't work on characters without consciousness, which is exactly what zombies are. When Dokja turns around to tell Sung-ah to get across the bridge, he sees Mr. Han already partway across, carrying her over his shoulder. The jerk didn't even need to think twice about leaving him behind. He tries to read Mr. Han's profile, but again sees that there's no profile register, though he can tell by the way Mr. Han's foot is dragging that he has the limping trickster constellation as his supporter. Since that constellation doesn't have a mental barrier skill, Dokja comes to the realization that he can only look at profiles of people from the novel. He can't cross the bridge alone, and zombies are rapidly closing in. Grabbing a zombie to cross the bridge with him wouldn't work since they're not characters, so he frantically tries to come up with a solution as the timer ticks down to 15 minutes. His foot slides near the edge of the bridge. If he had a combat skill, maybe he would have had a better chance. As if on cue, another one of his skills bookmark activates, letting him pick from either Namun or Hyunsung. He doesn't know what the skill does, but he instinctually selects the first option, Delusional Demon Namun, and finds himself able to use Namun's skills. This is enough for him to defeat Zombie Namun and hopefully send him to the afterlife for good. Moments later, the protagonist makes his appearance. He walks through the zombies seemingly unfazed and asks Dokja a simple question: "Who the heck are you?" Dokja reads his character profile, and sure enough, it's Jung-hyuk Yoo, the protagonist. Jung-hyuk rushes forward to grab Dokja's neck and questions him as he holds him out over the edge of the bridge. Of the novel's 3 ways to survive the apocalypse, the protagonist before him represents the first way: regression. Jung-hyuk forces Dokja to tell him his name before punching him in the stomach and commenting on his strong body. When Dokja tries to say more, he punches him again and makes it clear that he's the one asking questions. Even though he's the protagonist, Jung-hyuk is also, unfortunately, the most dangerous character in the early chapters of TWSA. He's already regressed 3 times and lost most of his humanity. When Jung-hyuk tries to punch him again, Dokja catches the punch and tells him to show some respect to his elders, even calling him by name and his former occupation, pro gamer. He plays it off as recognizing him because he works for a game company, but Jung-hyuk really only has one question for him: how did he survive the train? Dokja can tell just from looking at him that Jung-hyuk intends to kill him after he gets his answer. What can he say to survive this? Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint comes into play again, and he finds that since he understands Jung-hyuk so deeply from reading the novel, he can even read his mind. As a regressor on his 3rd try, Jung-hyuk is of course extremely curious as to why things are different when they were in an isolated train car. How did those who were supposed to die survive without his intervention? Dokja tells him the truth. He survived by killing insects. He even plants some doubt by saying he noticed the insects after the explosion, which was caused by Jung-hyuk to kill everyone in his cabin. Despite the new information, Jung-hyuk decides that Dokja is dangerous and uses his SS grade skill Eye of the Sage to try peeking at Dokja's attribute window. To both of their surprise, one of Dokja's skills, the 4th wall, automatically blocks the attempt. Jung-hyuk decides that he's going to kill Dokja then and there. Before he can carry out the act, Dokja desperately shouts that he won't be able to clear Scenario 46 himself. Jung-hyuk pauses and wonders if he's also a regressor, but Dokja deflects the question. It doesn't matter so long as he can be of use. Pushing it further, he states that he knows a future that even he, Jung-hyuk, doesn't. In response, Jung-hyuk uses a lie detection skill and sees Dokja is telling the truth. Could it be that Dokja is a prophet? He only knows of one prophet in the world, and asks Dokja if he can use future sight. Dokja doesn't give any details. Instead, he just says it's something similar and that he'll only tell Jung-hyuk of that new future if they become companions. Though he may not be a prophet, he can act as one since he was the only reader of the entire story. 50 seconds remain until the scenario ends, and Jung-hyuk accepts him as a companion. With the immediate danger dealt with, Dokja's Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint ends and he can no longer read Jung-hyuk's thoughts. Just before they cross the barrier to end the scenario, Jung-hyuk pulls Dokja in close. If he's really a prophet, shouldn't he be able to at least tell his own future? Jung-hyuk holds him over the water again while the serpent waits below. He asks, "Will I be letting you go or not?" Of course, Dokja doesn't need to be able to read his mind to know what's about to happen. Instead, he just tells Jung-hyuk to treat him as an equal and to cooperate with him. Jung-hyuk asks him for his answer again, and Dokja, with a smile on his face, tells him to let go already and get lost. Just as he predicted, Jung-hyuk lets him go and watches him fall into the serpent's mouth. At least now, he really believes Dokja is a prophet. Fortunately, the penalty for failing to clear the scenario this time isn't immediate death. Dokja looks around the serpent's belly to see corpses and debris floating everywhere. It's not a pretty sight, and he swims ahead to rest on a piece of concrete from the destroyed bridge. With this moment of rest, he reads through his system messages and recalls that, according to the novel, the serpents begin to secrete acid about every 3 minutes after they ingest their prey. He doesn't have much time. There's a flash of golden light from behind, and the Dokkaebi appears again. He surprises the fuzzy creature by telling it he's been waiting. Dokja has a plan to get out in one piece and stand as Junghyuk's equal, and it all starts here. He immediately tells the Dokkaebi that he was expecting it because it needs to take coins from him for failing the scenario, and that he already knew he wouldn't be killed for failing because it wasn't explicitly stated in the quest failure penalty. The creature cackles and demands 5,100 coins, which just so happens to be every single coin Dokja has. It tells him to pay up or die, and Dokja calls his bluff and tells it just to kill him. There's a stunned silence as the creature gives him a wide-eyed look. It actually can't lay a finger on him because of the huge amount of attention he's bringing its channel. It tries to threaten Dokja until he calls it by name as low-grade Dokkaebi Byung, and he asks how his career as a streamer is going. This, of course, throws Byung into complete shock. How does he know its name? How could a mere human know about this? A few of the constellations become suspicious as well, and Dokja asks Byung to shut its channel off so they can have a minute of privacy. It agrees and asks him how he, as a human, knows about the Starstream system, the broadcast humanity is the subject of. Dokja doesn't answer the question. Instead, he asks if it wants to be the Dokkaebi king and surpass the likes of Dokgak or Gildal to become the best streamer there ever was. He extends his hand and asks Byung to enter a contract with him if it wants its wish to come true. Byung laughs and calls him crazy, thinking it should have realized as such after he declined to select a sponsor. As a Dokkaebi, it can't become a supporting constellation, but Dokja never even had that in mind. Rather than his power, he wants to enter into an exclusive contract with his channel, a Starstream contract. Normally, an incarnation would have no say in the contract, and their sponsor constellation would set it up for them. Since he has no sponsor, Dokja can negotiate terms directly. Byung asks him how he dares to mention forming a contract without a sponsor constellation, but Dokja argues it's even better that way. If he doesn't have a sponsor, more constellations will watch and support him in the hopes that he'll pick them in a later selection. If he goes and outperforms everyone else without a supporter of his own, it'll attract even more viewers. The Dokkaebi seems half convinced but still demands that he pay the coins for failing the scenario. Dokja argues that he didn't fail and that it's really just starting. Sure enough, a hidden scenario activates to slay the serpent and escape within 10 days or die. It even offers a huge reward of 9,000 coins. Byung reactivates his screen and tries to reassure his constellation viewers while Dokja goes through the Dokkaebi Starstream cash shop. Since it can only be opened while the channel is open, it was about time for the constellations to continue watching anyway. Dokja looks up a few items. Ancient Dragon, an SS-grade heart purchased by a filthy rich constellation for 1.5 million coins to support its incarnation in Italy, Archdemon's Eyeball, and White Star Aura. In the end, he buys 4 bags of Hammer Seahorse mucus and 4 sharp stone hogthorns to clear the hidden scenario. Byung closes the stream again and agrees to discuss the terms of the contract with him only if he can clear the scenario. Everything is in Dokja's hands now, and Byung opens the channel back up before wishing him luck and vanishing once again. Only a minute or two remains until the stomach acid reaches him. In the bit of time he has, Dokja covers the thorns and himself in the seahorse mucus. The serpent roars as Dokja climbs the walls of his stomach with the thorns and stabs them deeply into its innards. He struggles to hold on up there, away from the acid, for what seems like an indescribable amount of time as his strength slowly fades and he wonders if he got it all wrong. He's just a reader after all. On the 4th day, Byung reappears and praises Dokja, who looks half dead and is only clinging to the wall out of sheer will. Just as his strength fails and he falls, the serpent dies and he earns 9,000 coins, and becomes the first to hunt a tier 7 sea monster, earning another 1,000 coins on top of that. The stone hog thorns have the unique property of draining fluid through them, and the mucus is naturally resistant to the stomach acid. By coating himself and the spikes in the mucus, the bits of stomach acid that reached him didn't have much effect, and he survived by drinking the fluid that the thorns sucked through them. What eventually killed the sea serpent was dehydration. After taking a few minutes to recover, Dokja cracks open a part of the dead sea serpent and extracts a glowing blue ball, its nucleus. He immediately has Byung put it up on the Dokkaebi auction house as a trade for a particular item, Broken Faith. Before he's able to continue with what else he wants to buy, Byung stops the stream again and presents Dokja with a system-written contract. Most of it seems like a good deal, but Dokja notes that the contract is missing the most important part, the ratio. Byung tries to negotiate for a 50-50 ratio so that all of the coins he's gifted get split evenly between them, but Dokja knows better. That might be how it usually goes, but Dokja doesn't have a supporting constellation, which means constellations have to pay a hefty commission to Byung to even donate to him. He demands a 100% share of the coins, while Byung can have the commission. The poor Dokkaebi keeps trying to negotiate, but eventually caves in and signs the contract, even having Dokja pay a 5,000 coin signing fee. Finally, our reader can leave the dead sea monster's corpse, and he swims to the nearby shore as he enjoys his first breath of fresh air in 4 days. All in all, he came out of everything with tons of rewards thanks to having read the novel, and he found out that not even the Dokkaebi could figure out his attributes. His fourth wall skill seems to be able to block literally any interference and also gives him a bit of pain resistance. He walks forward and enters the area of the second main scenario. Once there, he's immediately exposed to a poisonous fog that he has to escape underground to get away from. This is where the real game begins. We hope you enjoyed the story so far. Check out Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint to see how Dokja survives his adventure into a novel come to life.